What's up guys, Braden here with SuperATV, and today we're going to be showing you how to install SuperATV's Ready-Fit Winch on this Can-Am Maverick X3. So let's get right to it. So the first thing we're going to do is remove our front fascia. We're over here on the passenger side. We're going to grab a hold of our gas door, lift it like we're going to put fuel in it, and it's going to expose the T30 Torx. We're going to go ahead and remove that now. We're going to grab our T30 Torx and a 10mm wrench. There's going to be a nut on the back side of this fastener here. I'm going to go ahead and remove it. Now we're going to remove our two T30s up underneath our fender. You'll have one on the edge and then one up towards the center of the machine. So now we're going to remove the 8mm fastener securing the headlight to the front fascia. It'll be directly beside the headlight adjuster. And then while we're here, we're going to unplug the headlight. Same thing on the driver's side here. And we're going to unplug our headlight again. And then also, we're going to come right here to our fan wiring harness, pull down on the tab, unplug it. Then you want to come all the way up here to the front. You see you'll have another connector. So I'll lift up on the tab, unplug it as well, and then pull it off of the clip. And once you have your wiring undone, you just want to pull it back and out of the way, just like so. Leave it hang. And just repeat the same steps for the opposite side. And then we'll have 4 T30s across the front we'll have to remove. Be one on the outside edges. One straight down through here. Then 2 more on the opposite side in the same locations. Then if you have a front bumper installed on your machine, you'll want to go ahead and remove it. We're going to remove our hardware out of the bottom of our bumper here. And then remove our bumper. So now we're going to come right here to our hood and firmly just pull straight up until our hood pops off. Then we'll have 2 push pins here and 2 T30 Torx. We'll need to remove those as well. Now we're going to come back here with our fenders, fix straight up on them. And we're gonna wiggle our fascia around the shock tower and grab a hold of our fascia, lift straight up and remove it. Now we're gonna remove the hardware securing our radiator to our front bulkhead. We'll have two 10mm bolts and nuts in the bottom, and then two 10mm bolt and nut on the top. We're going to remove our hardware once we removed our nuts. Do that on the top and bottom. And then you can just grab a hold of the radiator, lift it straight up. So now what we're going to do is rotate our radiator out of the way enough to where we can get to our 18mm nuts. If you're going to have two on top and two on the bottom, you'll want to remove all four. And we're going to remove these two nuts on the bottom. So now you're just going to want to lift up on your radiator enough to get it out of the way. Grab a hold of your bulkhead. Slide it off the machine. So just to help give us a little more room, we're strapping our radiator up. If you don't have a shock tower brace in the machine, you can lift this radiator way up out of the way. We do have a shock tower brace installed, so it kind of limits the amount of movement we have with our radiator. So I just threw a ratchet strap on the bottom here, and I didn't cram it down tight. I mean, it's not going anywhere, but we don't want to strap down too tight to where we're going to damage our radiator. We just want to get it up out of the way. So if you have a frame stiffener installed in your machine, you'll want to install our spacer plates. The upper one will go on just like so. It'll sit like that. The lower one will go on like this. They're both the same. You just want to make sure you orient them this way right here on the bottom, and then like this on the top. So now we're going to grab a Ready-Fit winch, slide it onto our factory A-arm bolt, and then go ahead and start our nuts. Now what we're going to do is come to the passenger side of the machine in the front and go ahead and open the door. If your machine's equipped with the factory Can-Am harnesses, they're retractables. What you're going to do is remove the harness from the lower portion here. So we just come to the adjuster. We're going to slide the harness out, pull it through, and that way we can feed our seat belt buckle and our harness through the slot in the seat once we get all our hardware removed. Now we're going to grab our seat cushion here, lift it straight up, go down through the notches in the seat and get a hold of the 18mm nuts and go ahead and remove them. We'll just let them drop for now. Then we're going to remove the two 13mm bolts on the front of the seat. Once the hardware is removed, just lift straight up. Then you'll just want to start feeding your harnesses out, just like so. Just completely feed them through the seat. And then you can just grab a hold of the seat and pick up, remove it from the machine. Then we're going to come to this panel right here. We're going to grab a hold of it, pull straight out and lift up. Take the panels and set them aside. Come to this front panel. We'll do the same thing. Just pull out And we'll just pull this one to the side, pull straight back. Now we're gonna go ahead and grab our wires and start feeding them to the inside of the machine. Start feeding them through the middle. We have a shock tower brace on ours, so that's kind of where I wanted to start feeding them through. I like to get my slack pulled up just a little bit, and then it makes it easier to feed the wires through. So we're gonna get them up here, around to the other side here. Grab a hold of our wires. And then we're going to feed them directly through this rubber grommet. We're going to feed enough wire in there to where it'll hold itself in place, and then we're going to go back inside the machine and fish the wires out. So we're just going to reach up in here, grab a hold of our wires, pull them down like this, and then just keep feeding them through. Go up to the front and just kind of work them back and forth. That way we know we're pulling the wires good and it's not in a bind anywhere. Now we're going to start feeding our wires over to this point here, which this is our bus bar. Feed them down through so I can grab them on this side. I'm just gonna keep pulling them through. So now we're just gonna continue feeding our wires towards our terminal bus bar. So I like to run mine on the inside, something like this, ground on top, and then our keyed on the bottom. So we'll just leave these kind of hanging here for now. And we're gonna go to the top side here and grab our keyed on source wire that's gonna be attached to our rocker switch and start feeding it up to the front to our winch. So now we're going to come back inside the machine. We're going to locate where we want to install our winch rocker switch. This harness is long enough to go to any of the factory locations. I'm going to choose this spot right here next to the override. We'll just come around to the back side of it and just push the factory dummy plug right out. We're going to take our winch harness and we're going to feed this in through the rocker switch hole first. Start feeding the whole harness down through here. And we'll grab our keyed on source wire. Go ahead and feed it down through the hole as well. Pull the rocker switch up into place and just snap it right in to the factory rocker switch location there. So the next thing we're going to do is feed this connector here all the way to the front where we mounted our quick mount winch to the frame of the machine. This connector here is going to go through the same rubber grommet on the firewall of the machine as the two hot and ground wires that we just previously ran. It's kind of difficult to show on camera up underneath the dash where this is at, but what I like to do is just take my hand, follow the wires that we already fed through, and just follow them all the way up, and then just take my harness and we're going to put it right through that grommet. We'll come around to the front side and start feeding it up towards our winch solenoid. We're over here on the driver's side, it's a little more exposed. You don't have to remove any extra or additional panels in order to get to that grommet. The passenger side, you would have to remove a couple extra panels, so that's why I prefer to feed my wires on the driver's side. So as you can see, we just fed it directly through the same grommet here. I'm going to pull some slack, and then we're just going to feed it. I'm just going to drop it down here. I'm just going to plug it into the winch solenoid connector here. You just spin it around until it lines up, and then take your locking nut and thread it on by hand. So now we're gonna grab our red keyed on source wire and we're gonna feed it from the driver's side over to the passenger side to the bus bar where we already have our other 2 wires. I'm just gonna reach back in behind here and just drop this wire down and then come over there to the passenger side and grab a hold of it. We're gonna follow the same routing as we did with the hot and ground. So now we have all 3 of our wires here. Again, on this terminal bus bar, you're gonna have a keyed on source at the very bottom, an all-time hot in the middle, and on the top, this is gonna be your ground. So that's how we're gonna hook these wires up. Black is ground, red is all-time hot, and then the keyed on source, the red wire here will go here. We're gonna do that now. Go up here to the top, we're gonna start with our ground. This is a 10mm socket. Go to our hot. And just so I know I'm getting a good connection here, what I think I'm gonna do is put my terminals for the winch below the OEM connector here. All that's gonna do is just ensure that we're making a very solid connection. We're going to use this nut to really tighten down on these terminals. You want to get them tight enough to where they don't move. We're going to go ahead and flip our ground the same way that we just did our hot. Now we're going to install our keyed on wire. And then real quick, we can just do a test. Our winch is working. So now what we're gonna do is go back out to the front of the machine and get our front fascia and everything reinstalled, get everything tightened up where it needs to be. So now we're gonna go ahead and fully tighten all of our hardware for our quick mount winch. It's gonna be utilizing the same OEM hardware, nothing changes there. Make sure you get it good and tight. So what I like to do is just come back and double check to make sure everything's tight with a ratchet. It's very important that this hardware is as tight as you can possibly get it. So you're going to come to your factory bulkhead and we're going to remove the factory clips off of this bulkhead here. I like to just use a flathead screwdriver to pry the inner clip up, and then you can just take it right off. And we're just going to install them right into our new quick mount winch mount. So now we can go ahead and take our strap loose that was securing our radiator up out of the way. We're going to make sure that our radiator sits on the inside of our mount, just like this. Make sure that you have your bushings in. Then we're going to grab our hardware, make sure that we have our sleeve off of our bushing, ready to go. Install the hardware just like so. I like to put the head side of the bolt towards the inside and then the nut towards the outside. Get this hardware in, and then we're going to come up top to our shock tower brace and install the hardware here and here. Now we're going to take our hardware and slide it through our upper radiator mount, through our shock tower brace. May have to wiggle around just a little bit to get it to go through. I like to get my hardware through and then take my nut, slide it on the back side, and then just kind of thread my bolt into the nut. Makes it a little easier. So now we'll grab 10mm sockets, 10mm wrench, and we'll tighten our radiator up to our quick mount winch. So now we're going to take our front fascia and go ahead and get it reinstalled. Whenever you're putting this front fascia back on, just really take your time. There's a lot of different pieces, a lot of different moving components here for it to get to fit correctly. Don't ever force anything because you will break the clips off. Everything goes together a certain way and it all will go back together. Just take your time, walk around, make sure that all of your clips are going back exactly how they're supposed to. Apply good downward pressure everywhere. Just make sure it's hitting all the clips correctly. That's the most important part here. You don't want to force it down and break a clip. So far, I think everything's looking pretty good here. It's going to go back together just fine. So now we're going to go ahead and start reinstalling all of our hardware for our front fascia. I like to start with these topmost fender screws here, the long ones that we removed. Get them started and then just kind of work your way down, get your headlight hardware in, and then just keep fastening everything together. Now we're going to reinstall our hood here. I like to get my front one started in there nice. Now we're going to go inside the machine, tile our wires up, reinstall our panels and our seat. Main thing we're looking for here is we just don't want any of our wires getting bound up on the prop shaft or anything of that nature. Just going to fasten our wiring harnesses directly to the factory wiring harnesses here. Just going to use a zip tie, kind of zip tie them up out of the way. We're just going to start reinstalling our panels. Once we have our panels reinstalled, we're going to go ahead and grab our seat and get it back in. So what I like to do is just go ahead and get the seat in the machine and then feed our harnesses back through. We'll flip our seat up. We'll take our seat and we'll line it back up onto our studs. And then it's nice on the four-seaters or the Maxes, you can just go to the back seat and start your 18mm nuts, which we'll do that now. Make sure we get our nuts started. Slide them back together. So next thing we're going to do is grab our stop block and our stop block hardware. It'll be in a separate bag. It'll just have 4 Allens, 4 flat washers, and 4 nylock nuts. On the stop block, you have a cutout side and a flat side. The cutout side needs to go towards the front of the rope. And it'll go together just like this. We're going to take our Allens and slide them through the holes. And then on the back side, we'll put a flat washer. And then our nut. Now we're going to fully tighten our hardware for our stop block. Now we're going to take our winch hook, pull our pin out, line up our hook with the hole on our winch rope, just like so. And we're going to take the pin, reinstall it. Slide it through like this, and then you're just going to bend the cotter pin away from itself. Then we're going to grab our pull strap, slide it over our hook. So as you can see in the kit, you're going to have a wireless remote. In order to turn this wireless remote on, you need to hold down both buttons at the same time until the light illuminates red. Once it does, you can utilize the wireless remote to run the winch in. So this wireless remote will power down on its own. If you'd like to power it down, all you have to do is hold both buttons down again. The red light will go out and you're good to go. So that's all there is to it to install SuperATV's Ready-Fit Winch on this Can-Am Maverick X3. Be sure to check the description below to pick yours up today. And while you're there, drop a like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.